Hi, this is Erin Coopey, the Glorified Home Chef. Today we are going to learn how to shuck an oyster. Chances are, unless you have been to culinary school, no one ever showed you how to shuck an oyster, but it's really simple, and I'm going to show you exactly what you need. We start with the right tools. First, you'll need an oyster knife, which is a dull knife, and it's very, very rigid with a blunt tip. We also need either a nice protective glove or some towels to hold the oysters so you don't get your hands all chewed up. And it's a good idea to have a nice sturdy wire brush as well. This is just a simple brush that I might use to clean my barbecue grill as well, but it has wire bristles that are going to help us get that oyster nice and clean. So let's get started cleaning the oysters, and then I'll show you how to shuck them. Before getting ready to shuck them, it's important to get a lot of the extra dirt and detritus off the oyster themselves. So that's why I use this wire brush. It's a very stiff wire brush, and I simply brush into the crevices along the oyster. I've soaked it a little bit in some cold water to help loosen that up. And I just brush off any little bits of seaweed or broken shell so that it'll be nice and clean when I'm ready to shuck it. To protect your hands from the rough shell, I recommend that you either purchase an oyster glove, which is kind of a coarse glove that can protect your hands, or you just keep a kitchen towel nearby. So I'll use this kitchen towel to hold the oyster. Now, the oyster, this is the bottom of the oyster. See how it's more rounded and the top is a little bit more flat? So when you open your oyster, you always want to make sure that the bottom, the rounded part, is on the bottom so that you retain all of the juice and the flavor of the oyster there rather than having it pour out. Now, I'm going to place it on the towel and hold it in place. Then I'm going to insert my oyster knife into the shell. There's a hinge back here, kind of a space between the top and the bottom of the shell. Okay, so this is the hinge of the oyster, and you can tell that the two sections come together, as opposed to the front of the oyster, which looks more like a smiling mouth. So I insert the oyster knife there, and I give it a little twist. And did you hear that? The oyster popped, so the shell, the hinge, has broken. Now, I'm going to run my oyster knife underneath the shell, and I'm going to loosen that adductor muscle to remove the entire top shell. And you just continue to work your knife around the edge of the oyster, just like that, just to remove that top. And there we are. Now, the oyster is loose in the bottom here, but we want to just make sure that the bottom adductor muscle is loose as well. So I just kind of scoop around very gently, trying not to tear the oyster itself, just loosening that muscle underneath. Perfect. So that little guy is ready to be slurped. All right, it's just that simple. Now all I need is a little lemon, some horseradish, maybe some cocktail sauce, and I've got a good snack. Or better yet, I could roast this with some Parmesan and bacon. So for this recipe and a lot of other great tips, check out glorifiedhomechef.com. Professional tips for the chef and everyone.